Hello everyone, PFun41 here. This video is going to be about the Frankenstein rear projection TV that you may have noticed and that I mentioned in the last video. So this is a Namco Rapid River arcade game made in about 1997. Now, from the factory, this game comes with a Mitsubishi VS5043 rear projection TV. It's a standard definition 4:3 aspect ratio 50-inch TV. Very common item from that particular period. So what we have going on here is we have the cabinet, the lens, and the mirror from the original TV. But the internals are from a Mitsubishi WS48413. Now the WS48413 is a newer TV. It's a widescreen HD 48-inch TV. So what I've done is I basically just swapped all the internals. Now the fact that they were both Mitsubishis surely played a huge part in making this much simpler. All of the projector units bolted right in, no modifications necessary. The main board posed a few more issues. Long story short, this main board is a lot bigger than the old one. It's not only wider, it's also deeper. So the first thing I had to do is I had to cut the bottom out of this support because it's so wide in order to make it fit back there. So I did that, and I added some bracing to support this board since I cut out the bottom of it. Now after I did that, I still had the issue of it being a little too deep to fit in there. That wasn't that hard to solve. This is a foot that used to come out from the back of the TV, and this was the original back. But I wasn't really concerned with getting the back to fit because it's going to be in the back of an arcade cabinet. I knew it would clear, and it will be protected, so no real need to have a proper back cover. So I simply just moved it about to this spot and anchored it down, and it fits there nicely. You can see a number of remnants from other parts that didn't get bolted back up in their original places. This is, of course, from the last video I made, this is my circuit to turn on automatically. But this connector here runs over to this little board, and this is the original board that used to be on the front of the TV. It's got the indicator light, and it's got all of the switches to control the TV. Instead of putting it back in the front, I decided to mount it back here because if I put it in the front, it's an absolute nightmare to get to. I have to remove a plexiglass cover just to get to it, and that just didn't make any sense to me. It makes more sense for it to be back here. So over here, you can see another one. This is the front composite and S video ports, and you can see that the signal from the arcade game is actually plugged into this port. The reason for that is pretty simple. For some reason, this TV likes to default to that port when it loses its memory, which is pretty much every time the game gets turned off because it doesn't retain its memory settings, which is why I needed that circuit to be able to turn it back on. The original TV would remember its last power state, but this one for some reason doesn't. I would have liked to just, unplug this and not worry about it, but that's the port it likes to default to, and it's easier to just let it do that than to try to make it work differently. So I just left it there. Now, the surprising part is how well this actually worked. So I'll come around to the front here, and you see the picture is actually really good. I mean, it is a projection TV, so it's not perfect, but it's just as good as the old one was. There are a few issues with the sizing and the spacing and all that. If you'll notice, we do have, here is the top of the picture, here's the top of the frame, same thing at the bottom. Here's the bottom of the frame, here's the bottom of the picture. You can also notice when the letters come up, it's cutting off the edges a bit. The reason it's doing that is because this is, I didn't re-aim any of the projectors. I didn't do any kind of adjustments like that. There isn't any kind of fine tuning for the size or the position of the picture. There's only the usual zoom, stretch, those kind of functions. So not unsurprisingly, the picture does cut off a little bit, and it's a little bit shorter height-wise than I'd like, but all things considered, it actually came out really good. And when you're actually playing the game, it looks great. No issues at all. So this actually turned out really well. So I've explained now how I did it. The question is why? And that's the big question. Everybody's going to want to know, why on earth would you do this? Well, to understand why I did this, you have to understand the situation. When I got this, the original TV worked, and it worked right up until I put it in. Once it was actually on the floor and people were actually using it, it lasted all of about an hour before the convergence went out. And that's when I got the call that it was doing funky things, and a picture of a horribly distorted image, and I knew it needed convergence chips. But when I showed up, the screen was black, nothing at all. I quickly decided that it wasn't worth trying to fix that TV. I tried resoldering some joints to see if it was cold solder joints, and I still got nothing. Plus, if you'll notice here, is this little tray. That is to catch coolant, any coolant that may leak out of the projectors, because these old rear projectors use coolant on top of the CRTs to keep them cool. Well, that had leaked out on the old one, and it didn't have the tray. So the coolant had leaked out onto the board and been damaging it for who knows how long. So that, in addition to the fact that I had no picture at all, the TV wouldn't even come on and retain power. It would just turn on and then immediately go into shutdown mode. And the fact that I knew that even if I got it to stay on, it would need convergence chips meant that it just wasn't worth fixing. So initially I was going to put an LCD in here, but an LCD poses a number of problems. Number one is the signal. This is an S-video signal. Now, you wouldn't think this would be a big deal, but in 2018, finding a newer LCD screen that has an S-video connection is quite difficult, especially if you're not looking at higher end models. The other issue is getting a TV that would fit and look good in this cabinet. Because this is designed for a 4x3, any widescreen is obviously going to be shorter when you put it in there. So the best case was to get a 50-inch TV, but it had to be a specific 50-inch TV that would fit in this cabinet. I found one on Craigslist, but when I called about it, they had already sold it. Besides that, the TV, the cabinet for the original TV actually provides support to the arcade cabinet. If you'll look, it's not a perfect fit, and I can move the cabinet around. Without this cabinet in here, this whole arcade cabinet just flops around. It would not last a day before somebody broke it. So to get a flat screen TV in there, I'd have to get the right TV, which would probably require me to spend a bunch of money. I would have to completely reinforce the entire cabinet, mount the new TV, make a bezel for it so you couldn't see through to the back. It would take a lot of effort and a lot of money. And this game was new to this environment. I did not know how popular it was going to be yet. So I didn't want to spend a bunch of money and time doing that. But I got lucky. About a couple days after this happened, a Mitsubishi 48-inch, which I didn't know was a 48-inch at the time, rear projection TV showed up on Craigslist in working condition. So I went and I picked it up, got it back, and as luck would have it, it was about a half-inch too wide to fit into this cabinet. So I looked at it and I said to myself, I can either spend a bunch of money and a bunch of time trying to get an LCD crammed into here, or I can swap the guts from this TV that I got for free into this cabinet that I already have and see what happens. So I did, and it worked out really well. So that's how and why I ended up with this Frankenstein TV. And the plan at this point is, unless I get sick of it, just run it until it has issues. And this particular TV does have some issues. The coolant, there is a bit of a coolant leak from these CRTs. Luckily, it has this drip tray to catch them. So, it's not going to last forever, but you know what? It was free, just cost me a little bit of time. So at this point, I'm going to run it. And that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below.